So we can make it a very casual conversation. We have Jazzy who just logged on. Awesome. Listen, guys, I'll keep it brief. The idea here is to get you all excited about participating and getting involved and getting engaged with the MIT AAA. From my perspective, so I'm the outgoing president for the previous board. The reason why I joined this organization is because I feel that this is the only organization that can put together events at a meaningful scale. I think a lot of the local clubs are doing a wonderful work, but the region is just fragmented in such a way that it's just very difficult for a local club of one single country to host an event that can compete with whatever, like a continent driven organization can put together, something like the European group or something like even the MIT Enterprise Forum. And so for anybody that is interested in being involved with MIT, but also put together events that can really affect the entire region, I think really this is the best choice.
And we can go to Mace, our newest president.
Hi everyone, I'm Mace. I'm sure you saw my videos going on, so I'll keep it brief. I'm really excited for the next 2 years. I'm excited for new people coming in. As Anwar said, we've started our digitization very nicely with the webinar the past few months, and we want to continue it. We want to keep everybody in the region engaged and more aware of MIT. And I think with new people joining in, it's going to give us a bigger network and bigger reach. And that's pretty much it in a couple of minutes or seconds. I'll let everybody in go further.
We could go with Faris next.
Okay, so this is my 7th and last year on the board. I'm quitting. So I was on a few different roles, mostly as treasurer and finance, but also I spent 2 years as president. I'm very excited by this last board. I think has been quite the most successful during my time, at least, in terms of bringing people on, and onboarding in general. So I'm quite hopeful for what the next board can achieve. Not just the board, but the volunteers. Again, I think we want to emphasize that we need a lot of volunteers, and without that, we probably won't be able to achieve much. But that's my hope.
Thank you, Faris. And Rodina, can you take us next?
Sure. Also been on the board for a long time, coming on to 9 years. So my primary target initiative was the scholarship fund. And I'm just really excited about where we are today with the opportunities that COVID actually presented, and moving towards digital and having a broader reach, and just bringing in so much more infusion into the board. So really excited to have new energy on board. And while I'm stepping away, I hope that I will still continue in some kind of volunteer capacity, advisory capacity, and encourage you all to do the same as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may interrupt, I'm also staying on as a volunteer. So
Thanks for your help, Faris. Ali, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Ali, I am based in Morocco, Casablanca. I've been on the board for a long time as well. I think for 3 terms as a director and as a VP. Graduated from MIT grad school, ESD, Engineering Systems. And I think really what can I say, the main thing which I mentioned in the video are really working with these great, amazing people. It has been a lot of fun, but also it's a good way to stay engaged with MIT and professors and departments and all the things that happens in Cambridge. And I will stay engaged as well with the board. So.
Thank you, Ali. I think Talal, can you go next?
Okay. I've been associated with the board for 12 years. since 2008. I've served as president, board member, and finally, I think for 2 consecutive time, I was senior advisor. And I'd like to continue being a senior advisor and give or volunteer my services for any role that is needed. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think with the question and answer, I can go further. So.
All right, and our other advisor as well, Hazem.
Thank you, Dana. I'm Hazem Sriqat. I've been involved with the board since 2011 as a board member and president, and then as an advisor along with Talal. I think it's been it's been great to see the organization evolve over the last 10 years from when I was first introduced to the association, a conference in Abu Dhabi, from an association that organized a conference every couple of years to to establishing a scholarship fund and organizing these webinars. And I think it's a very exciting time to join the board. I think we can do great things. Thank you.
So now hearing from one of our volunteers, Noor.
Hi everyone, my name is Noor Ghadamfar. I am Syrian that's based currently in Houston. And I've been a volunteer with the organization for the past year. And it's been amazing to see, even as a volunteer, how much you can achieve. Sometimes, being a board member takes up a lot of time and people don't have the time commitment, but being a volunteer, if you're really passionate about a specific initiative, you can really, jump on board, hands-on, and get a lot of things done. And it's been great being able to work with people who graduated from MIT at different times and, get their experience. So I highly recommend it.
We also have Moana from the MIT Alumni Association here with us.
Thanks, Dana. I'm Moana Benton. I work at the MIT Alumni Association to support the efforts of affinity and shared interest groups, including the Arab Alumni Association. I support the Black alumni of MIT, the Latino, Latinx, and the LGBT, and also the women's group is one of the, I've been at MIT for almost 18 years, so I have seen some great work coming from you all, especially in the last 3 months. It was just amazing how you could put together some fantastic panels in very short time. I think it's very easy to volunteer for MIT because of all the support from the mothership that we give you.
And of course, we wouldn't be able to do all of this without our assistant, Zaina, our powerhouse. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure, sorry, I don't have a video. It's not working. I'm Zaina. I've been working with the association for the last, it's going to be 4 years soon, or 3. It's been a long time. And I'm here to help you whenever you need it and to facilitate your work and to bug you with reminders of things that you need to do.
And I guess lastly, I'm Dana. I was a volunteer this past year because I wasn't an alumni yet. But now I'm hoping to run for the new board, and I hope that most of you are as well. So we'd love to open it up to questions now. If any of you want to know about what the MIT AAA does or anything specific to our different board positions, what we've accomplished, feel free to raise your hand and I'll pick you, just so we don't have people talking over each other. And you can do that by, in the participants handle, you can raise your hand, but I'm sure everyone's familiar with Zoom by now. So Anwar, you raised your hand.
Awesome. Yeah, while people take their time to just formulate their thoughts, I just wanted to highlight that essentially what we've done this time is that we've already elected the incoming president, which is somebody that has already been familiar with the current board, with the current setup. And so I think what you'll all find is that Mace has a lot of experience in terms of how the previous boards have operated, but also is quite excited about shifting us to the new more digital type of work that we're doing. And so what we're really ensuring in that way is essentially there's a sense of continuity between the previous work that has been done and the new board. And I would just encourage all of you to nominate yourselves, to also encourage your friends to nominate themselves. You can see that there's a certain number of spots on the board, but there's also a lot that we can do just with the energy and passion that MIT grads bring to bear. So the work that Noor and Dana have done over the last call it year or so has been just phenomenal. I mean, like just the energy that they brought into this board has been very palpable, and I'm sure that we would not have been able to achieve that without them. That being said, I do want to encourage you all to nominate yourselves and to try to take on like the commitment of being on the board, and we can talk a little bit about what that takes in terms of 1 or 2 hours per month or a bit more pressing. And so hopefully we'll be able to address all of your questions.
Thank you, Anwar. That was really nice. Salman, I see you have a question.
Yeah, so just maybe this is a natural follow-on question. So in terms of how the board operates, is there a strategy that's like set at the outset of the year? Is it like a 1 year, 2 year? How does the board kind of think about its work and then organize? I noticed there are a few specific roles for directors, some more common than others, and but otherwise, kind of how does it organize and kind of monitor its progress?
So we have 4 prior presidents here who can probably give you, Faris can take this question.
Well, we're probably still to a certain extent reflecting a retreat we held in 2015 in Istanbul, when we, I think a lot of us at the time who were on the board sort of had some misgivings, maybe some questions, what are we trying to achieve? And so we all got together for a few days and strategized about what we should be doing, and we identified a couple of initiatives and a couple of sort of what you might want to more call back office tracks in a sort of a matrix structure. So you had things like obviously the scholarship fund that Rosanna's been heading, or started and heading, the conference initiatives, the relationships with students, mostly manifested through ASO, regional activities and support to local clubs. So those were the 4. We did identify other initiatives where we thought, let's start with those 4 or focus more on those 4. And then we had what we at the time thought more were sort of back office, finance, obviously, governance, but also marketing. I think with hindsight, what we've come to see is that marketing or communications is really about engagement. And maybe it's not really so much of a back office thing. That being said, and I'll end there to allow other board members to answer what I think is an important question. It's also up to each board to define what the association should be doing. And I think it has varied from board to board.
So Mace, as our new president, do you have any input into this question?
So basically, as Faris said, we've had a lot of, we have a small structure, or as he said, that we've put together and that we follow. The terms for each director would be a 2-year term. But for example, this year we had decided that we will vote in the president ahead of time to ensure continuity. And we run in-house elections for that. And then we have a lot of other initiatives that we'd like to implement the next 2 terms. For example, in whether the actual role of each director, we might have to change into that. And Dana has had a couple of ideas as a volunteer into how we can adjust a couple of board director names and responsibilities. We also have a lot of things because we are actually moving into a new way of dealing with our alumni. We always used to focus a lot on the networking and the physical interaction between our members. So we'd focus a lot about a conference, a in-person conference. But with everything that's happened in the past 6 months, we're now moving into more, as the whole world is, into more of a digitized world. So we're actually trying to see the maximum we can get out of that new setting, whether it's going to be through webinars, whether it's going to be through podcasts, whether it's going to be through caucuses with certain topics, with certain professors. And since everybody's at a Zoom call reach away, it's going to be, it's much easier to reach than before, because before we had to think a lot about, we had to bring that certain professor to a certain place in the Middle East. We had to make sure a lot of the hinders we had can everybody access a certain country? Are there visa restrictions? Can we go to a certain place? A lot of that has created limitations to us. But now with the new way we can deal with our alumni, we have a lot and a big list of things we can actually do. I'll stick to that.
Thank you, Mace. Digitization is a big thing that we're working on, and hopefully you guys can help contribute to that. And I see that Yazid has a hand raised, so go ahead.
Awesome. So quick question. So I'm mostly interested in volunteering initially just because of the time commitment, and I kind of want to understand more about, you know, the time commitment and what volunteers kind of bring to the whole equation initially. Kind of just speak more about that.
I can talk a little bit as a volunteer. Yeah, I think it's honestly people who are passionate about something related to the Arab region, and you feel like, you know, the MIT Arab Alumni Association is a good platform to build on that, because there's so much access both to MIT and to institutions back in the region. So you can come on and, like, for example, my suggestion was our LinkedIn page should be public. It shouldn't be a private group. And we made that happen to get more of the word out. Dana and I also both worked on the COVID webinar series, and we organized. And then we've also been working on how the nomination process for this year should be and what it should look like. And honestly, you know, it's very open-ended. If you're interested in something very specific, let's say innovation ecosystems, and you want to see what you can work with the Arab Alumni Association, how we can do that, approach us, go like, hey, I have this idea, I need help, I need resources, what can we do? And you'll join a couple of our meetings, we'll try to set a game plan, and we'll work from there. And then maybe the next 6 months are really tough for you, so you can't attend any of the meetings, and then you have another idea and you jump back on. So it's very free flowing. I think it's not definitely not a requirement, and it's very open.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think our group, the number of board directors is a little limited, and the nomination process happens at a very specific time, and it's a 2-year commitment, which is great. You get to accomplish a lot. But as a volunteer, you can hop on at any point, and definitely need lots and lots of volunteers to help all of our initiatives actually happen. It's not just a team of 6 who's going to make everything happen. We definitely need all the support we can get.
If I can add, Dana, going back to the retreat that Faris mentioned in Istanbul, we sort of developed a structure, even though we haven't followed a rigid structure, where you know, you have a board for 2 years, and then that comes up with a strategy and then the different initiatives that the association is going to work on, and then volunteers can, as Dana said, hop in on and off depending on what specific initiative they want to be involved in. So if you're interested in the association and one specific thing that the MIT AAA does and you want to help with that, then, you know, being a volunteer is a good thing. If you want to be involved on a more regular basis and in setting the overall strategy, then I think it's good to join the board.
I will just mention here that the board tenure is 2 years, unless your last name is Zuraikat. In that case, it will get extended.
Maybe just to go back 2 questions, and something that slightly ties both Salman and Yazid's question, because I think maybe I didn't fully answer you, Salman. So after Istanbul, and when we set those 4 initiatives and I think 4 tracks, we then said, okay, let's, you know, try and put some rigor to this association, and each director was supposed to come up with a plan, sort of short, medium, long term for their initiative or their track. to look at, what are your deliverables and what resources do you need, whether that's financial or human resources or other. Did we actually follow through? No, not, I think, in large, but to a certain extent, maybe, at least it enabled all of us to sort of have those plans in the back of our heads. So I think it was nevertheless a useful exercise. And whether the board wants to proceed with sort of those more formal approaches or not in how it operates remains to be seen. But that sort of ties into Yazid's point, because then at least if you do have some sort of a target, whether that's as a plan or as deliverables, and you've to a certain extent identified resources, then, as a director, excuse me, you can reach out to volunteers or seek volunteers to say, look, we have this thing. Are you willing to jump on for 3 months or 5 months to get this thing done? So that's, it's not anything novel, but probably most associations or groups need to have some of that structure in place.
Thank you.
And I have another question. Oh, Matmoon, you have your
No,
hand
just saying thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, could you maybe touch on the roles? I mean, I'm sure like some things would change this year because of the whole Corona situation. So like, how have the board interacted with one another in the past? And then like, how do you see the roles moving forward?
So I think someone who hasn't touched on this yet, Rudaina, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure. First, structurally, we would typically meet once a month, and in the last 3 months, we've been meeting once a week, just because of the momentum of the webinar series and the quite honestly, the interest that has also pushed along, with a lot happening behind the scenes for organizing each of the sessions. But positions, there are some general positions like the events, scholarship, student relations, and what have you. But we can, and we have the structure that both Faris and Hazem alluded to, but that's not set in stone. Especially if we have a lot of subcommittees. For example, there's been an initiative in or interest in bringing an Arab course to MIT. So that came from an outside initiative, or having affiliation with MISTI. And all of these, by the way, have budget line items affiliated to them. So, and then there's a whole budget that needs to be addressed. And one of the things that not having an in-person conference, a real conference, means that we haven't spent that money, but and it takes a lot of money to run an in-person conference. So this will be a big decision taking forward once restrictions are removed. Do we go back to that, or how do we continue? And we don't have an answer to that at this point. So I can talk a little bit more about the scholarship if you're interested, just because that's an initiative that's there. We did an undergraduate scholarship. We decided not to fund that anymore, but instead we'd like to launch a graduate fellowship. In order to do that, though, we have to raise $500,000, and that's challenging. So that would require a big effort and a lot of commitment behind it, which we've tried and we will continue trying, hopefully.
And just to give you an idea of what we had for the past 2 years, could everyone say what their title was and if they worked only on that, starting with Mace?
Hi, so for the past 4 years, I've been director of conference. I've worked on the conference, whether it's collaborations with another entity, whether MIT AAA or entities at MIT. But for instance, because we're a very flat organization, whenever help is needed or whenever volunteering is needed for any other initiative, we always jump in. Whoever has the skills to do that, we'd always be there. Otherwise, whether events in general, whether it's going to be a local event or an event online, that's what the director of conference is asked to, is responsible of. But you're not restricted to these responsibilities. And you are, in general, all big, like the director is a volunteer with that little title. So you jump in with that wherever you're needed.
Another perspective, Ali, could you tell us what your role was?
Sure. In the past few years, I was the VP, basically working with the president on a number of things, everything that he has on the plate. And then the last board, I was for a while treasurer, in charge of finance. And then the last, I switched with Faris, and I took care of relationship with MIT. So in terms of any contacts with MIT, events, ASO, and all aspects linked to the university. But like Mace mentioned, I was gonna say, sometimes whatever comes, we all jump on it and then we try to make it happen. It's not that you have to work on that specific title.
Hazem, would you like to jump in?
I just wanted to emphasize that what Mace and Ali said. No, I wouldn't get too hung up on the titles. It's very much a flat organization. It's there are, depending on the time and what we're working on, you may end up spending only 10% of your time with AAA working on the actual and on the assigned function that you have. Otherwise, we all work on the conference when there's a conference, or we all help with the scholarship fund if there's helping. So yeah, just wanted to emphasize that point.
And as you can see, each one of the board members was able to moderate one of the webinar sessions, was able to help get those speakers for each session. So everyone plays a big role in everything that we do. And the more support we can get from volunteers, the more engagement we can get and ideas for engagement, the better we will do. So does anyone else have any questions?
And I have a comment.
Go ahead.
If I may. Your role on the MIT Arab Alumni Association counts as a volunteer role for all of MIT. So this is a really great way to connect back to MIT by being volunteer for the Arab Alumni Association.
Actually, if I may jump in to add to that, Moana, there's also the annual Alumni Leadership Conference, which happens in September. Probably won't happen this year, but this is the opportunity for alumni from throughout MIT, groups, affiliated groups, what have you. And we've had participation for many years running from board members. So that's also an opportunity to be very much connected to MIT and spend 3 days on campus.
Actually, it's now going to be virtual and you should be receiving information very, very soon.
Perfect.
Noor, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I did want to ask Moana a question actually, just in terms of what have you seen, alumni associations like ourselves do that's successful and that you think, as the Arab Alumni Association, we should try to emulate from the others that you work with?
You are at the forefront of the webinar series now, right? Usually it was the conference every other year that was your thing, and it done so well. But with the webinar series, it just done so well that I actually was trying to find someone to help me nominate that series for the awards, for the Alumni Leadership Committee Awards. So if there's anyone here who would like to help me write that, it's better when it comes from you as opposed to having my name. My name can be added to it, but it's better if it comes from a volunteer. Thank you, Faris. I'll circle back.
I think we have a question from Salman now.
Yeah, so I'll keep it short. My question is, where do you think there's most room for improvement on the board? What do you think could be done better? Maybe the biggest pain point, let's call it, if there is one that's clear.
I think Talal said it best in his video today. Talal,
which is basically engagement.
And I would add one thing: raising money, raising funds.
Yeah.
Financial engagement.
Okay.
That's what I was going to add.
Salman, would you elaborate?
Yeah, I mean, on financial engagement, just so that newcomers are aware, historically, 99% or whatever of funds have come from conferences, okay, physical conferences. And for the last few years, we've sort of been struggling to come up with ideas. And we have some ideas, but we haven't enacted any of them to come up with alternative revenue streams.
Just one more point to add to that. Nora asked the question. A lot of other groups, the clubs and groups, have a membership structure. So this group is really, really fortunate that you don't do that, right? But if it's something you need to consider, other groups do that. That's how they sustain themselves financially.
I think an interesting point to add to what Faris was saying as well, the conference does bring us a lot of money, but it's also, like Rodena was saying, where a lot of our money goes.
Yeah.
So we definitely need to think of different ways to raise funds, different places to put those funds. So the scholarship is a great place to put those funds towards. I think something that I've been in conversations with very frequently is Misty Arab World really wants our support, and either in helping them find sponsorship or companies who are willing to host students. And in general, I think the Arab world and MIT, I think this club stands at a really unique place in being able to build that bridge directly between alumni and campus. And so I think that's something we should really focus on, not only engaging with the students and with Misty, but also engaging in the region and helping connect from the region to campus. So that's one thing that I think we should really focus on as well. Go ahead, Mace.
To Dana's is that a lot of MIT's research is actually funded from our region, whether it's from Saudi Arabia, from Kuwait, from the Gulf, or from other places. So we're actually also at a unique place where we can be that connection between those investments into MIT and like putting them into light. So that's also another place where we can actually exploit more.
Faris, you have your hand raised. Do you still?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just wanted to say in response to Salman, I think one of our pain points in terms of what we ought to be achieving, and it ties to Talal's mantra of engagement, is that when you look at our membership, which by the way is I think around 755 a couple of weeks ago, it's mostly Arabs, i.e., people who are born in the Arab world, as opposed to say first or second or third generation Arab Americans or other permutations, European American or whatever. So there may be a missed opportunity out there in terms of capturing, if you like, that untapped market or, alumni. Whether or not we need to focus effort on that, and by the way, later we can, tell you about what we've been trying to do to capture those, or whether we should just focus on finding better ways to engage with the 755, that's up for debate. And they're not mutually exclusive either.
And what, I think you have your hand raised next.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one thing. So like the financial challenges or obstacles, whatever that were mentioned, think about those more of an income statement problem. In terms of balance sheet, actually, I think we're very well capitalized. The MIT AAA is probably has one of the call it like the fattest bank accounts out of the different MIT affiliated groups. And Moana can correct me.
I can confirm. I can confirm. Yes.
And so all we need is just more energy and more opportunities for engagement that actually will translate into more revenues coming in, but also more opportunities to spend that money and to kind of get the flywheel going. But from a resource perspective, we're actually very well capitalized, and I want to highlight that.
So to keep the discussion going, I think some of the ideas Mace, Noor, and I have been discussing involve trying to get that engagement that Talal has been talking about. So one idea was the podcast, which would involve basically a simple phone call with our huge network of alumni around the world about any topic. So, you know, living in the region, now I moved back to Saudi Arabia, you hear a lot from your family, from your friends, some sketchy science. But MIT is full of wonderful scientists and engineers who know a lot. So that's one idea we have, is just to be able to call up the front runners in physics or chemistry or biology or biotechnology who happen to be Arab, and trying to engage with them and ask them some questions and really distribute that around the world. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to make use of our network for a greater good, and also be able to connect with this network ourselves and learn from them and hopefully engage them, not only for keeping that network alive, but also supporting incoming students, and also supporting students who are going to become alumni and joining that network in the future. Faris has his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so again, just to go back to some previous threads. So as Anwar said, and as Moana confirmed, and I can confirm as the treasurer, we do have a healthy balance sheet, you know, our bank statement. But a couple of years ago, so faced with the fact that we were not successful in hosting any conferences, the last one was in 2015, and worried about the fact that no money was coming in. I think we sort of tried to change the paradigm and say, well, rather than just continue to worry about spending money on things, very, very valuable things, whether it's a scholarship fund or supporting ASO's camp initiative or ASO's SciTech conference or React in Jordan, for example, many great initiatives. Rather than worry about the cash flow, maybe what we should be thinking of is seeing these as opportunities for us to engage with alumni and get them to contribute money and time or whatever else it takes to get these initiatives resourced financially and otherwise. Because our engagement levels have been generally low with alumni, think of these as opportunities. And sort of that, in a way, frees you up then from worrying about cash inflows. Of course, then you have to get more creative to get that engagement going.
Yazid, you have a question.
Yeah, I have two quick questions. How long is the board? So if the president's voted in now, how long do they stay on the board and the directors? Second question is there any local MIT clubs that you guys collaborate with within the Arab world other than, this club? And what is the extent of the collaboration?
Mace, go ahead.
So Yazid, as we said before, so basically we usually start our terms in July for 2 years, whether it's the directors and the president. And this year, because of all the situation, we'll be starting our terms in August once the elections are done. Every director and the president stay on for 2 years, and then we elect the new board. Regarding engagements with other groups, we've recently just collaborated with the MIT Club of Lebanon. And we've collaborated with other clubs, whether it's in where was it, in Kuwait. We don't have an official club, but we have a representative of a club that we've collaborated with on an initiative. And we are open to different collaborations. For example, the MIT Club of Lebanon reached out to us, and we're ready to collaborate. We should increase that. We should increase the reach out to those clubs, and that's why Dana has had a marvelous idea of having a director of regional engagement, and that's going to be one of the responsibilities. I'll let somebody else answer.
Hazem, you had your hand raised.
On the regional clubs, I was just going to say, I think the only registered clubs in the region are UAE, Lebanon, and Egypt, I think.
There's a huge Saudi Arabia one.
Saudi Arabia, of course, sorry. Of course, sorry. That was in places like Jordan. It's just there's one level below a club is country representative. I'm the country representative for Jordan. We've actually there's been several events in Jordan where we got support from the MIT AAA, like React that Faris mentioned. There was a month or a couple of years in January where there were several MIT initiatives running at the same time. So we held a big gathering for everyone that was partly funded by the MIT AAA. We had a professor from the Media Lab come and visit, also had the MIT AAA. So we can provide, and the MIT AAA has provided some funding on an ad hoc basis to some events here and there for local clubs and country representatives.
Can I add?
Go ahead.
So there are supposedly 91 MIT alumni clubs around the world, but because they are volunteer run and volunteer driven, some are active and some are not. So depending on the volunteers that come on to take the clubs, but this group, the Arab Alumni Association, is because it's global, right? It can reach more people than the local clubs in the regions.
And I'll add to the last two comments that there's no official definition of what our role is or is not vis-a-vis local clubs. We gave ourselves, if you like, the role of trying to foster clubs where no clubs exist and to lend support to those countries where clubs do exist. And we did get together in Amman a couple of years ago and invited members from different clubs and said, we'll even give financial support for the ticket, whatever, just to make it a bit of incentivized. And we only had someone from UAE club and someone from Palestine where there is no club. But the idea was specifically or explicitly, let's have a dialogue and see what works. We don't want any clubs to feel we're stepping on toes, but we're here to initiate a discussion. The other collaboration other than clubs is MITEF, the Enterprise Forum. So they have local chapters, including in the Middle East, or the Arab world rather, Pan-Arab, it's called MITEF Pan-Arab, and they have the Arab Startup Competition as their flagship event. And as an actual company, they have staff, they're quite effective. And for the last year or so, we went through a formal process to say, let's jointly organize conferences because we each have our strengths. And we were probably getting close to doing that, but then COVID struck. So, but I think we're still open with them to other forms of collaboration.
Bilal, go ahead.
Yes, I want to second what Faris said, that we are, as an MIT AAA organization, we are here to support the local club and help them form a club if they don't have one. For example, we have big holes in the organization. One of them is Egypt. Egypt is a big country and have a lot of alumni, but somehow our engagement with them has not been very successful. It's not like there was a rejection or whatever. So there's a lot of work to be done in that area. And the engagement, I'm saying that's the way to do it. For example, also one of the scenario is that the webinar should be really used up one notch, which means invite people who are alumni to join. Instead of waiting for them to say, yes, I'll join, go to them and say, could you please join that webinar? So, this kind of things, there's a lot of work to be done in that area. Yeah, go ahead.
I think I misspoke, and I don't think there's a club in Egypt, actually. There's a student organization. I confused that, because I don't think there's an alumni club in Egypt.
Yeah. And that always mystified me. Why?
Yeah. True.
So
I believe you need to have 100 active members to have a club.
Oh.
You
Is
have to
that
have a
Moana? Is
leader.
that right? You need to
You
have
have
one
to have
Moana leader.
leaders, right? So
Yeah, right.
if their board falls apart, the club falls apart.
Yeah.
So I think we're nearing the end of the hour.
Wow.
It's been an awesome discussion. I'm really glad all of you are here and that we are able to talk about this. I've actually been recording this session, so hopefully people who couldn't join in with us can also tune in and have any of those questions that you may have asked also already answered. If anyone has any final questions, you can go ahead. Okay, Faris.
Not a question, but a suggestion. I know that two alumni have reached out to me in the last 10 days or so, and I've had, long one-on-one chats with them where they've asked questions maybe about specific director positions. So if any one of you wants to have more of a one-on-one discussion, I'm sure all of us board members and volunteers are ready for that.
Right, all of our emails are on the board description on the website. So you can reach out to us individually, read a little bit about what we've been working on. You can also find descriptions of what the roles are exactly on our website if you want some clarification on what the standard is for that. But of course, like we discussed today, there's always going to be room to change what exactly you work on and what your role will be exactly. But I'd love to encourage all of you to nominate yourselves. There's no harm in nomination. And we can have this discussion in much more detail as soon as you are able to join the board. Any closing thoughts from the board?
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We're welcoming all of you, whether
Love to
it's
have you.
a position or volunteer. We're welcoming the engagement.
Yep, absolutely.
It's a great group. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we can answer any more of your questions offline. Please nominate by July 15th. That's when the form closes, and elections will proceed right after that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Thanks.
Thanks.
Everyone.